Hey guys, we're behind the rod building bench to discuss the MHX Offshore Jigging Series. These rod blanks come in 14 models from 6.3 all the way up to 7.3, and they range from 150 grams to 300 grams with medium light to extra heavy powers, and they all have a moderate action. There's a few nuances and kind of specific things when you start to get into slow pitch jigging, vertical jigging, any of that offshore jigging. So we're going to walk through what makes these blanks unique and why you need to build on them. Let's talk a little bit about the materials first. We've got a Toray 6K woven graphite fiber. That's going to be 33 million modulus, and there is a nano resin in this. In addition to the core material, MHX has added in a 5K crosshatch carbon weave on the outside of the blank. That adds in impact resistance and it gives you a protective outer layer without increasing weight. The blank designers at MHX went through this rod blank from tip to butt to design a rod blank that will give that angler total jig control at all water depths. The small diameters coupled with the recoiling action allows you to properly pitch that jig and fish it at the desired depths. These are lightweight, they're sensitive, and they're very durable to spend long hours on the water and pull those big fish out of the depths. Okay, now let's talk about putting this rod together. There are some very unique things that an offshore jigging angler does think about when building a rod like this. Most of the time, you will have a more minimalistic approach to this. So we're going to use something like EVA handle sections. We're going to use a conventional reel seat, or we'll use a spinning reel seat. But the guys are using EVA grips because they flex under load. These rod blanks flex deep into the handle. It allows you to fight the fish properly, but more importantly, it allows you to fish the jig properly. So you'll notice we have an extremely lengthened handle section. This is something that you're not going to see on a bass rod. And then of course, we just have EVA grips and a reel seat. This is your typical handle section for an offshore jigging blank. Now, moving forward, most of the time we're going to be using smaller diameter guides. They're going to be braid proof. So the high-end guides from major manufacturers like CRB in that LZR series, a lot of the Fuji series, things like that. Most of the time, we're going to build a double foot all the way out, and you see spiral wrapped guides a lot on slow pitch and vertical jigging blanks. The reason for that is you're fishing vertically, you're pitching the jig out. If when you work the jig, the line gets wrapped on the top of the blank, it slides right off the top. You're not getting hung on the guides. And then of course, it allows you to have maximum fish fighting ability when you get hooked up next to the boat. Another consideration that might come into play with a vertical jigging setup that does not typically happen with your regular rod build is the handle section. So I spoke earlier about how long this handle section is. Unfortunately, with a handle section this long, the rod blank is exposed and can rub on a rod holder that you see on most offshore boats. So you'll notice we have a slider piece here. This piece is affixed right in the middle. You'll see on some rod blanks, this piece will actually slide back and forth, and that gives the angler, a little bit of freedom to get this piece out of the way when it's tucked under their arm and they're fishing and fighting a fish. But then when they need to put it into a rod holder, they can slide this piece back into the middle, and now it's affixed, protecting the rod blank while it's in a rod holder when you're running in maybe rough offshore conditions. Okay, let's end with talking about the jigs and how we match them to the rod blanks. So each vertical jig, you'll notice, is measured in grams. You have some that are as light as 60 grams, you have some all the way up to 1,000 grams. That is going to be based on the water depth that you are fishing. And also, when you go to the jigging chart to look at these blanks, that's why we've got 14 models ranging from 150 to 300 grams. You're going to typically match the weight of the jig to the depth of the water. That is an easy starting point. So most of the time, if you're fishing 100 foot of water, you're going to use a 100-gram jig. Now, there are some other considerations that you won't know until you get out there. So you notice here, I've got a full jig bag. I've got sizes from 50 grams up to actually 600 grams in here, some different shapes. You will notice, I have more of a flat jig. This jig has a lot of action under the water. This is 130 gram. So what we can do is we can fish that jig, in a little bit shallower water, maybe from 80 to 150, depending on the current and the wind. Because remember, the current and the wind will have effect on the jig that you're fishing. So a common way to choose your jig and your rod is match the gram weight to the depth, and then you match the gram weight to the rod. So if we're fishing a 200 gram jig in 200 foot of water, we're gonna use a 200 gram vertical jigging rod blank. So there you have it. We have talked about the MHX Offshore Jigging Series. If you're into this, it's very, very exciting. It's fun to fish. It's a very unique way to fish, and you do a lot of catching. If you haven't gotten to the offshore jigging yet, whether it's vertical jigging, fast speed jigging, or slow pitch models like we've got here, you really need to get into this. They're fun to build, they're fun to fish, and it's very, very, technical, but it's easy to learn and it's really fun to do. So guys, run over to mudhole.com, check out the new MHX Offshore Jigging Series, and go out, build them, and have an absolute blast on the water.